The history of the Republic of China begins after the Qing Dynasty in 1912, when the formation of the Republic of China as a constitutional republic put an end to 4,000 years of imperial rule. The Qing Dynasty ruled from 1644 to 1912. The Republic had experienced many trials and tribulations after its founding, with including being dominated by elements as disparate as warlord, generals and foreign powers. In 1928, the Republic was nominally unified under the Kuomintang, Chinese Nationalist Party, after the Northern Expedition, and was in the early stages of industrialization and modernization when it was caught in the conflicts among the Kuomintang government, the Communist Party of China, which was converted into a nationalist party, local warlords, and the Empire of Japan. Most nation-building efforts were stopped during the full-scale Second Sino-Japanese War, War of Resistance, against Japan from 1937 to 1945, and later the widening gap between the Kuomintang and the Communist Party made a coalition government impossible, causing the resumption of the Chinese Civil War in 1946. Shortly after the Japanese surrender to the Americans and the Western Allies in September 1945, a series of political, economic and military missteps led to the KMT's defeat and its retreat to Taiwan in 1949, where it established an authoritarian one-party state continuing under Generalissimo President Chiang Kai-shek. This state considered itself to be the continuing sole legitimate ruler of all of China, referring to the communist government or regime as illegitimate. A so-called People's Republic of China, declared in Beijing by Mao Zedong in 1949, as Mainland China, Communist China, or Red China, although supported for many years, even decades, by many nations, especially with the support of the United States, who established a 1954 Mutual Defense Treaty. As the decades passed, since political liberalization began in the late 1960s, the PRC was able, after a constant yearly campaign in the United Nations, to finally get approval in 1971. To take the seat for China in the General Assembly, and more importantly, be seated as one of the 5 permanent members of the Security Council. After recovering from this shock of rejection by its former allies and liberalization in the late 1970s from the nationalist authoritarian government, and following the death of Chiang Kai-shek, the Republic of China has transformed itself into a multi-party, representative democracy on Taiwan and given more representation to those native Taiwanese, whose ancestors predate the 1949 mainland evacuation. Early Republic. Founding of the Republic. The last days of the Qing Dynasty in the late 19th and early 20th centuries were marked by civil unrest and foreign invasions. Various internal rebellions caused millions of deaths, and conflicts with foreign Western European powers almost always resulted in humiliating unequal treaties that exacted costly reparations and compromised the country's territorial integrity. In addition, there were sentiments that political power should return to the majority Han Chinese from the minority Manchus from the northeastern province of Manchuria. Responding to these civil failures and discontent, the Qing Imperial Court attempted to reform the imperial government in various ways, such as the decision to draft a constitution in 1906, the establishment of provincial legislatures in 1909, and the preparations for electing a national parliament in 1910. However, many of these measures were opposed by the conservatives of the Qing court, and many reformers were either imprisoned or executed outright. The failures of the imperial court to enact such political liberalization and modernization caused the reformists to take the road of revolution. There were many revolutionary groups, but the most organized one was founded by Sun Yat-sen, a Republican and anti-Qing activist who became increasingly popular among overseas Chinese and Chinese students abroad, especially in Japan. In 1905 Sun founded the Tongmenghui in Tokyo with Huang Xing, a popular leader of the Chinese revolutionary movement in Japan, as his deputy. This movement, generously supported by overseas Chinese funds, also gained political support with regional military officers and some of the reformers who had fled China after the 100 Days Reform. Sun's political philosophy was conceptualized in 1897, first enunciated in Tokyo in 1905 and modified through the early 1920s. It centered on the three principles of the people: nationalism, democracy, and people's livelihood. The principle of nationalism called for overthrowing the Manchus and ending foreign hegemony over China. The second principle, democracy, was used to describe Sun's goal of a popularly elected republican form of government. People's livelihood, often referred to as socialism, was aimed at helping the common people through regulation of the ownership of the means of production and land. The Republican era of China began with the outbreak of revolution on October 10, 1911, in Wuchang, the capital of Hubei province. Among discontented modernized army units whose anti-Qing plot had been uncovered, this would be known as the Wuchang Uprising, which is celebrated as Double 10th Day in Taiwan. It had been preceded by numerous abortive uprisings and organized protests inside China. The revolt quickly spread to neighboring cities, and Tongmenghui members throughout the country rose in support of the Wuchang revolutionary forces. On October 12, the revolutionaries succeeded in capturing Hankou and Hanyang. However, the euphoria engendered by this victory was short-lived. On October 27, Yuan Shikai was reappointed by the Qing court to lead the new army, and loyalist forces under Feng Guozhang and Guan Qirua moved south to retake Wuhan. After heavy fighting in November, the outmanned and outgunned Revolutionary Army was driven out of Hankou and Hanyang, and retreated to Wuchang south of the Yangtze. During the 41-day Battle of Yangxia, however, 15 of the 24 provinces had declared their independence from the Qing Empire. Yuan Shikai halted his army's advance on Wuchang and began to negotiate with the revolutionaries. A month later, Sun Yat-sen returned to China from the United States, where he had been raising funds among Chinese and American sympathizers. On January 1, 1912, delegates from the independent provinces elected Sun Yat-sen as the first provisional president of the Republic of China. Yuan Shikai agreed to accept the republic and forced the last emperor of China, Pui, to abdicate on February 12. Empress Dowager Longyu signed the abdication papers. Pui was allowed to continue living in the Forbidden City. However, the Republic of China officially succeeded the Qing Dynasty. Some advocated that a Han be installed as emperor, either the descendant of Confucius, who was the Duke Yansheng, or the Ming Dynasty Imperial family descendant, the Marquis of Extended Grace. Early Republic. On January 1, 1912, Sun officially declared the establishment of the Republic of China and was inaugurated in Nanjing as the first provisional president. However, power in Beijing already had passed to Yuan Shikai, who had effective control of the Beiyang Army, the most powerful military force in China at the time. To prevent civil war and possible foreign intervention from undermining the infant republic, Sun agreed to Yuan's demand for China to be united under a Beijing government headed by him. On March 10, in Beijing, Yuan Shikai was sworn in as the second provisional president of the Republic of China. The republic which Sun Yat-sen and his associates envisaged evolved slowly. Although there were many political parties vying for supremacy in the legislature, the revolutionists lacked an army, and soon Yuan Shikai's power began to outstrip that of parliament. Yuan revised the constitution on his own and became dictatorial. In August 1912, the Kuomintang was founded by Song Jiaoren, one of Sun's associates. It was an amalgamation of small political groups, including Sun's Tongmenghui. In the national elections held in February 1913 for the new bicameral parliament, Song campaigned against the Yuan administration, whose representation at the time was largely by the Republican Party, led by Liang Qichao. Song was an able campaigner and the Kuomintang won a majority of seats. Second Revolution. Song was assassinated in March. Some people believe that Yuan Shikai was responsible, and although it has never been proven, he had already arranged the assassination of several pro-revolutionist generals. Animosity towards Yuan grew. In April he secured a reorganization loan of £25 million from Great Britain, France, Russia, Germany and Japan, without consulting the parliament first. The loan was used to finance Yuan's Beiyang army. On May 20, Yuan concluded a deal with Russia that granted Russia special privileges in Outer Mongolia and restricted Chinese right to station troops there. Kuomintang members of the parliament accused Yuan of abusing his rights and called for his removal. On the other hand, the Progressive Party, which was composed of constitutional monarchists and supported Yuan, accused the Kuomintang of fomenting an insurrection. Yuan then decided to use military action against the Kuomintang. In July 1913, 7 southern provinces rebelled against Yuan, beginning the Second Revolution. There were several underlying reasons for the Second Revolution besides Yuan's abuse of power. First was that most revolutionary armies from different provinces were disbanded after the establishment of the Republic of China, and many officers and soldiers felt that they were not compensated for toppling the Qing Dynasty. These factors gave rise to much discontent against the new government among the military. Secondly, many revolutionaries felt that Yuan Shikai and Li Yuanhong were undeserving of the posts of presidency and vice presidency, because they acquired the posts through political maneuvering rather than participation in the revolutionary movement. Lastly, Yuan's use of violence dashed the Kuomintang's hope of achieving reforms and political goals through electoral means. However, the Second Revolution did not fare well for the Kuomintang. The leading Kuomintang military force at Jiangxi was defeated by Yuan's forces on August 1 and Nanchang was taken. On September 1, Nanjing was taken. When the rebellion was suppressed, Sun and other instigators fled to Japan. In October 1913, an intimidated parliament formally elected Yuan Shikai president of the Republic of China, and the major powers extended recognition to his government. Duan Qirua and other trusted Beiyang generals were given prominent positions in the cabinet. To achieve international recognition, Yuan Shikai had to agree to autonomy for Outer Mongolia and Tibet. China was still to be suzerain, but it would have to allow Russia a free hand in Outer Mongolia and Tanatuva and Britain continuation of its influence in Tibet. Mass banditry. Yuan Shikai and the National Protection War bandit leaders with popular movements instigated revolts. With the support of Sun Yat-sen's revolutionaries from Canton, the bandit-led Bailang rebellion ransacked and destroyed much of central China before it was crushed by the Beiyang army of Yuan Shikai, the Muslim Marklik and Tibetan militia. These bandits were associated with the Gelorui. In November, Yuan Shikai, legally president, ordered the Kuomintang dissolved and forcefully removed its members from parliament. In January 1914, Yuan formally suspended the parliament. In February he called into session a meeting to revise the Provisional Constitution of the Republic of China, which was announced in May of that year. The revision greatly expanded Yuan's powers, allowing him to declare war, sign treaties and appoint officials without seeking approval from the legislature first. In December 1914 he further revised the law and lengthened the term of the president to 10 years, with no term limit. Essentially, Yuan was preparing for his ascendancy as the emperor. On the other hand, since the failure of the Second Revolution, Sun Yat-sen and his allies were trying to rebuild the revolutionary movement. In July 1914, Sunday established the Chinese Revolutionary Party. He felt that his failures at building a consistent revolutionary movement stemmed from the lack of cohesiveness among its members. To that end, Sun required that party members to be totally loyal to Sun and follow a series of rather harsh rules. Some of his earlier associates, including Huang Xing, balked at the idea of such authoritarian organization and refused to join Sun. However, they agreed that the republic must not revert to imperial rule. Besides the revolutionary groups associated with Sun, there were also several other groups aimed at toppling Yuan Shikai. One was the Progressive Party, the original constitutional monarchist party that opposed the Kuomintang during the Second Revolution. The Progressive Party switched their position largely because of Yuan's sabotage of the national parliament. Secondly, many provincial governors who had declared their independence from the Qing Imperial court in 1912 found the idea of supporting another imperial court utterly ridiculous. Yuan also alienated his Beiyang generals by centralizing tax collection from local authorities. In addition, public opinion was overwhelmingly anti-Yuan. When World War I broke out in 1914, Japan fought on the Allied side and seized German holdings in Shandong province. In 1915, the Japanese set before the government in Beijing the so-called 21 demands, aimed at securing Japanese economic controls in railway and mining operations in Shandong, Manchuria and Fujian. The Japanese also pressed to have Yuan Shikai appoint Japanese advisors to key positions in the Chinese government. The 21 demands would have made China effectively a Japanese protectorate. The Beijing government rejected some of these demands but yielded to the Japanese insistence on keeping the Shandong territory already in its possession. Beijing also recognized Tokyo's authority over southern Manchuria and eastern Inner Mongolia. Yuan's acceptance of the demands was extremely unpopular, but he continued his monarchist agenda nevertheless. On 12 December 1915, Yuan, supported by his son Yuan Keding, declared himself emperor of a new empire of China. This sent shockwaves throughout China, causing widespread rebellion in numerous provinces. On 25 December, former Yunnan Governor Cai Yi, former Jiangxi Governor Li Lijung and Yunnan Gen. Tang Jiao formed the National Protection Army and declared Yunnan independent. Thus began the National Protection War. Yunnan's declaration of independence also encouraged other southern provinces to declare theirs. Yuan's Beiyang generals, who were already wary of his imperial coronation, did not put up an aggressive campaign against the National Protection Army. On the 22nd of March 1916, Yuan formally repudiated monarchy and stepped down as the first and last emperor of his dynasty. He died on 6 June of that year. Vice President Li Yuanhong assumed the presidency and appointed Beiyang Gen. Duan Qiruo as his premier. Yuan Shikai's imperial ambitions finally ended with the return of republican government.